could probably sit here and talk to you for hours about everything, but obviously you don't have the time for that. But first of all, tell me a little bit about your history here with Lynchburg.
My family and I moved here in 1961 from Tennessee. It was a hugely exciting time for our family. Come to a new place, start new schools. I was in different schools each year. I started at Garland Rhodes and went to Robert E. Lee for 8th grade, then went to E.C. Glass. Graduated from Glass in 1971. Lynchburg's very much home.
Yeah. So how did you get into the film business? You wanted to be a singer and musician or whatever first, right? You wanted to sing?
I never, ever had the ambitions to be involved in the film business in any way. I was a singer-songwriter. I was in high school, and we were having the talent show, and some friends of mine and I started playing guitar and singing, and actually a friend named Bev Davies was a really great guitar player and singer, and he needed somebody to back him up, and he asked me if I played guitar. And I said, well, I've got one, but I don't really know how to play it. And he said, I'll teach you, because I need somebody. And that got me started. And then we formed a group with some friends, and we sang in the talent show. And then in the next year, I heard about the talent show, and I had started writing my own songs. And I auditioned with a song that I had written. And then this really pretty girl that I knew, who was also a singer, and she had been in the talent show, said, I loved that song you sang. Where did you find it? And I said, well, I wrote it. And she went, and then I was hooked. It was like I was on heroin. And I just, once I had that reaction, I had to keep doing it. And when I went to college, I was sitting in my dorm room one night, and I found myself writing a song, and I made a record of it, and then started a little record company, and I had a hit here in Lynchburg, a top 20 hit.
What was it?
It was called Rain, and sold it at the local stores on consignment, and that just, it let me believe that I might have a career doing something I really love to do.
So then how on earth did you get into the Hollywood movie business from there?
So I went to Nashville when Opryland was a theme park. I was finishing college. I was in seminary. Actually, I did a year of divinity school at Duke University, and I heard about Opryland having auditions, and I decided it was a chance to go see if I might possibly get a job in music, and I drove over and auditioned, and they offered me a job, and I stayed, and I got signed for Nashville's biggest music publisher. And I was writing, but I wasn't really in traditional country music. That wasn't really my heart. And I decided I needed to go somewhere else, and I packed up everything I owned, and I moved to California. And I met a woman, and I fell in love, and she had on her coffee table a stack of pages, and they were in a different format than anything I'd ever seen. And I asked what it was, and she said, well, it's a screenplay, and her father had written it about his experiences in World War II. And he became my father-in-law. I married his daughter. We had 2 sons. And when I read that format, it was like the heavens opened up for me. I saw this format seemed so natural and easy to me. And all the years of writing songs actually made me a different kind of screenwriter, because I wrote dialogue in a kind of lyrical, musical way. I don't mean I wrote it to be sung, but the greatest speakers and the most captivating ones have a musical quality to what they say. It's almost like opera. So I just found that was a natural format for me, and I started to have success there.
I'd say, was Braveheart your first screenplay ever?
Braveheart was my first movie ever. I did work in television for a few years before that, and I kind of I paid my dues there. I worked the 16, 20-hour days, learned to produce, learned what directing was like, but I always wanted the longer form, and Braveheart was my very first movie.
And I know the Wallace that it's based on is not your family Wallace, but still, you tell me how you came upon that story.
So there's in this sort of Google universe, there are what they accept as facts, and there's what I accept as a fact. I actually am absolutely convinced I'm a descendant of William Wallace, in that no one knows who his children were. He was an outlaw, hunted, so he didn't publicize who his kids were. But the way the story came to me was so mystical in its way. It felt divinely arranged. So the woman I married, she and I were discussing children. She had a great career as a professional dancer. She danced on the Oscars and the Grammys and the Emmys. And she said, look, if we get pregnant, you have to promise to take me to Europe. And it was a great deal as far as I was concerned. I really wanted children, and soon we were expecting, and our first son was on the way. And we went to England, and she knew all of her ancestry, and I didn't know any of mine. But I had heard from a Robert Burns poem that the name Wallace was a Scottish name, because Robert Burns wrote a poem called Scots Which Have with Wallace Bled. And I knew of that poem, so I thought, well, maybe if we go to Scotland, we'll find something about Wallaces. And we went to Edinburgh, and we were walking into Edinburgh Castle, and as we walked in, on the left side was Robert the Bruce, the greatest king of Scotland, and on the right was a statue of someone named Wallace. And I said to one of the guards there, as a member of the Black Watch, just like in Game of Thrones, only he had on a kilt, tough as nails, short little Scotsman. And I said, who is this Wallace? And he said, he's our greatest hero. And I said, greatest hero? And I'm elbowing the pregnant wife, right? Yeah, greatest hero, honey. And I said, I know Robert the Bruce was Scotland's greatest king. Was William Wallace his ally in fighting against the English? And he said the magic words for every writer. He said, no one will ever know for sure, but our legends say that Robert the Bruce may have been one of the ones who betrayed William Wallace to clear the way for himself to become the king. And in that story, I was struck by lightning. It was as if I had heard that St. Peter and Judas were the same person. Like, what if, and what if is the most powerful phrase for any writer, what if there was something so noble in the way William Wallace lived and died that it transformed a man who would betray his country's greatest hero into his country's greatest king. That was a massive story, but I wasn't ready to write it yet. I had a baby on the way. I had to figure out how to feed my family. So I spent 10 years writing novels, working in television, and then the time came when I thought, it's time. I've got to write this story.
Wow, good thing you did.
Yeah.
How did you hook up with Mel Gibson?
I wrote the screenplay without any sense that anybody was ever going to like it. And in fact, when I finished it, I didn't think anybody would like it. I had breakfast with one of my best friends, a guy named Jack Bernstein. Jack wrote Ace Ventura the same year I wrote Braveheart. And we would give each other our screenplays, and Jack, being a comedy writer, would always think, well, if I can make Randy laugh, then it's working. And I would think if I can make Jack feel something, then my screenplay's working. And I gave him the screenplay thinking he was going to tell me I needed to find another career, go to law school or something. And we sat down and he said, I got to tell you, I think this may be the best thing you've ever written. And you could have knocked me over. I had no expectation that anybody was going to like it. And then it turned out that everyone who read it liked it. I had given it to MGM Studios, and the young woman who was the executive, who's Sidney Pollack's daughter. Now, Sidney Pollack directed Out of Africa, 3 Days of the Condor, Jeremiah Johnson, some of my favorite movies of all time. And she's got her dad's brilliance. And she called me and said, I've never seen this happen. We've Xeroxed the scripts and we've handed them out to all the executives, but their assistants read them first, and all the assistants are sitting at the desk crying. And I've never seen that happen. And we think we've really got something here. Who do you want to send the script to? What actor? And the strange thing was there was only one in the whole world that I can think of. It was like all or nothing. It's got to be this guy, because I couldn't see anyone else except Mel Gibson having the ability to play this character. Of course, you think about other people, but you just go, no, it's like, who's going to marry your daughter or something? Nobody seems good enough, right? And sent the script to him, didn't hear anything, and then my agent called me and said, are you sitting down? And I said, no. He said, maybe you want to sit down. I go, what is it, what? He said, Mel Gibson wants to have breakfast with you tomorrow morning. He's read the script. And I walked around the neighborhood and I prayed sincerely that I would not kiss up to him, because I knew that if I did, like, a movie star in Hollywood is the most powerful of things. And especially in those days, if someone like Mel Gibson said, I like the phone book, then somebody would give him $100 million to, as we say, shoot the phone book. I thought, if I just go in there trying to tell him what I think he wants to hear, then I've got no value to me and no value to him. And I've got to go in and tell him the truth, whatever that is. And we sat down at breakfast, big table full of executives, and Mel across from me. And in like 3 minutes, I was leaning across the table like a Baptist tent revivalist, and I was pounding on the table. And I said, look, every movie has a message, whether it wants to have a message or not. It has one. And the message of most movies is the guy with the bluest eyes or the cutest dimples or the biggest biceps gets the cutest girl. That's what most movies just say. This movie says, if you're faithful to your heart, even if they cut it out of your chest, you prevail. Now, that's the movie I want to make. That's the movie I want my sons to see. You want to make that movie? I'm your guy. You don't want to make that movie, you need to say no. And all the executives around the table went, and Mel leaned forward, and I knew he was in. And it took a while, but he said yes.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah.
So then you went on and did, I know, just some really amazing movies, and you've directed and written. Do you have anything in the works right now?
Yeah, got a number of things. I just sold a screenplay to Apple on Hannibal, the ancient Carthaginian general who crossed the Alps with elephants to fight ancient Rome. I'm working on something on the Swiss Guards, who are the men who protect the Pope. My family and I were all in Rome a few years ago, and we got to meet the Swiss Guards, and we have friends at the Vatican, so that was interesting. And Mel and I are also working on the follow-up. I don't want to say the sequel exactly, but the follow-up to The Passion of the Christ. We're working on the resurrection. So that's the Mount Everest of stories.
Yeah.
So we're working on that too.
And tell me then how you came to be doing a performance now live about living the Braveheart life.
So the pandemic really bothered me. Bothered's a mild word. Not only the separation of everyone, the dividing us, which I think made us, it separated us from the best part of ourselves, which is to connect with other people, not through a Zoom, though Zoom's an amazing invention, and I use it all the time, it's great. But there's nothing like being with another person or another group of people. And I also realized early on that the audience is as big a part of creating a story as the storyteller is. The way the audience responds, what they are feeling and giving back is a communication in the creation of a story. And I wanted to do something live. I wanted to experience that learning and the joy that comes when you really connect with someone. And even when you see a movie is much more fun, say a comedy, is funnier when you're watching it in a theater full of other people. So is a horror movie, is much more horrifying, it's scary. A dramatic movie is more moving when you're with people. So during the pandemic, I was feeling all of that, and I was also feeling that we were being ruled by fear. And everybody is becoming more and more afraid of each other and afraid to be around each other. So my sons and I sat down and thought, okay, how can we create something that would be exciting for us to do and thrilling for other people? And we created this live show and wanted to explore, what does it mean to live a Braveheart life? Why are people responding to this movie? Even 30 years later, why are people still watching it? Like I was at a basketball game, and Duke was playing, and a friend of mine who knew Coach K and his wife introduced me to Coach K's wife, Mickey. And of course, I was thrilled to get to meet her. And when she knew what I had done, she said, Mike, at Christmas time, we'll have the family gather around and all sit under blankets and watch Braveheart together. And you think, now, why do people do that? And why is it speaking to them? And how can anybody find a way to live their life in a way that's more built on faith instead of fear? And that's what the show's really about. I tell stories about how I came to write certain scenes. I show the scenes. I show some scenes that were in, like we have a scene that was in Heaven Is For Real that didn't make the final cut, but it's about a boy walking into heaven and what heaven might look like. And we show scenes from Secretariat, We Were Soldiers, and of course Braveheart, even Pearl Harbor. And I sing some songs that I wrote either for those movies or about those movies. So it's an experience that we're after. Yeah. And we thought, okay, the premiere show we need to do in Lynchburg. Yeah. This is where it all started. This is where we need to start.
Excellent. So you haven't performed this anywhere yet?
We've done trial runs at different places, but this essentially is our premiere. Yeah.
Are you touring the country with this?
Yes. We did our last show was in Mississippi as our sort of trial run, and we filmed it there. And we're going to be in Nashville at Belmont University, the Fisher Center there in August. And we're booking dates around the country.
Now, are your sons part of the show at all, or do they?
My sons aren't performing on stage yet. I'm scheming for ways to do that, but they have created all of the effects around it, all of the technical processes that are involved, and even we have merchandise as well. They've even done that.
Merch.
Yeah, we do too.
So, what are you hoping that the audience comes away with? you've kind of answered, I think, but.
What I hope the audience experiences here is not so much the superficial thing of, well, here's one of us, here's somebody that grew up in Lynchburg with us, like us, who did something he never imagined he could do. That's cool. I'm sure it's certainly wonderful for me to get to come home, but I'm not coming home as I'm different from you. I'm coming home as this is home. These are my people. This is my family. My family still lives here, and I want everyone to be able to ask themselves what makes, how they can celebrate their own stories in their own life. I had an experience some years back, and I used this in the show. I talk about it, that I was lying in a hospital and the doctors told me they were going to amputate my hand. And I ended up keeping both my hands, and I decided I wasn't going to just do exercises to restore the use of my hand. I was going to celebrate having hands. And how do I do that? And in a way, the show is my celebration of that I have hands. I can play, I can sing, I can still write, I can still perform. And I think there are different ways we use our hands, including reaching out to each other and squeezing someone else's hand and saying, don't be afraid. I'm here. And that's what I want people to experience.
Can you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you sing something that you're going to sing, or just, a line of it? Or?
Yeah, sure. The end of the show, I grew up in the Baptist church, and my sister and I were talking about this last night. She's a great musician, and she's sung and played in many different churches, but she said, the thing I miss about the church we grew up in is that everybody sang from their heart. You could feel it. And I decided for the end of the show that I wanted to write a song that was not about fear, but it was about courage and faith and gratitude for what we have. And I wrote a song called Praise Ye the Lord. And I sang it with a choir in Jackson, Mississippi. So in the show, I have the choir singing with me. So it'll feel a little bit bare, I think, but it's praise ye the Lord, praise ye the Lord, when we're drowning, who says, come on board? And that's the way that song's going to go. And it's a big kind of joyous hymn. And that's where my life is right now.
All right, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd hoped I would?
Just to let everyone know, there's still tickets available if they want to come to the Academy. I'm so moved to get to be here. When we moved into Lynchburg in 1961, the Academy was this beautiful old building, but it was sitting there vacant and dead, and the citizens of Lynchburg have recreated it. Some of my friends who I grew up with were leaders in that effort. So it's really moving to me to be here, and I hope anyone that, if you're interested maybe in having a career in movies, or you want your life to be more creative, or you just want to come and celebrate the chance to be with each other, then I hope everyone will feel welcome to join us on Wednesday night, this Wednesday night at 7:30.